All right, who's going to be the next United States Senator from the state of California? That's Dianne Feinstein's seat. Is it going to be Katie Porter? Is it going to be Adam Schiff? Is it going to be Barbara Lee, Ro Khanna, Gavin Newsom, Dianne Feinstein? These are all names that are being mentioned. Sounds fun. They all run. Man, that's a super fun melee. All right, let's talk about it. Cuomo says, let's get after it. Joan Greve, senior US political reporter at The Guardian, joins us now. Joan, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No problem. So Joan, Adam Schiff, he hasn't declared yet, but we all think it's near 100% that he's running?
Yeah, I'd say so. According to some reports, he has already talked to Feinstein in the past month or so, indicating that he does intend to run. He was initially looking at potentially running for some kind of House leadership position, but he decided against that, and it was kind of pretty widely understood that he was choosing to forego that for the sake of focusing on a Senate race. And if he did jump into the race, he would start off with a nice advantage of having about $20 million sitting in the bank. So, it seems all signs seem to point to that he will jump into the race.
Yeah, I thought that they were grooming him for Speaker of the House for a while, but then Hakeem made a strong run, and he's got a couple of advantages that Schiff doesn't. So Schiff goes to try to run for the Senate seat. So that I get it. I get the politics of it. But talking to Feinstein that you just mentioned there, that's become an interesting part of this story. Okay, so I'll get to Schiff. I'll get back to Schiff in a second. But Katie Porter, who is someone who's actually announced that she's running, I think she's the only one who's announced that she's actually running. It took some heat from Sunny Hostin on The View and a couple of the other women on The View. I don't know if anybody else said the same thing, but probably, because usually the folks in media have giant groupthink. And they chastised her for not getting permission from Feinstein. Is that a thing? Are you supposed to get permission from the people that you might run against or the seat that you're? Who cares that she didn't get permission from Feinstein? Why on God's green earth would anyone care about that?
Yeah, I think that there was even some kind of, well, I guess I would start off by saying that I'll use a generous word. It is a unique situation because Feinstein has not yet officially announced that she's not planning to run for re-election, but basically nobody expects her to run for re-election. She hasn't been fundraising at all. And so usually if you're an incumbent who is planning to run again, you are aggressively raising money so that you can be in a better position when you do run again. If she were to run again, she would be 91 years old on election day in 2024. And so nobody really expects her to run again. And yet there is this sort of almost kind of walking on eggshells type approach about entering the race officially, because it has not been made official yet by her that she is not planning to run again. That being said, I think that Katie Porter made the probably a potentially wise strategic decision by deciding that she was going to enter the race anyway, because now she can start fundraising more aggressively for the seat. I think she raised something like $1 million in the first 24 hours after she announced. And you did see some of her potential opponents in the Senate race kind of saying that they were not ready yet to announce. And I think there was some sort of maybe some, potentially some regret on their part that they didn't get into the race earlier. So yes, it is this kind of bizarre dance that's going on right now around the fact that Feinstein has not yet officially announced her plans.
Yeah, and you said Schiff talked to Feinstein. That forces us to talk about the elephant in the room, which is, what are we talking about when we say talk to Feinstein? Feinstein has massive cognitive issues. We don't know if it's dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever it is, but she literally can't remember from 1 minute to another. So there is no talking to Feinstein. That's nonsensical. So that means there's actually other people making the decision on behalf of Feinstein on whether she runs again, which would be, it's like Weekend at Bernie's. It's absurd. It's beyond absurd, right? So that can't happen. Although with the establishment, what difference does it make? All they want is puppets anyway. So, but who does Schiff actually talk to? Is there a chief of staff that's actually making the decisions? Or is it the Democratic establishment in California? It's a vague group of people, the Speaker of the Assembly in California, Gavin Newsom. Because it ain't Feinstein. So who's actually making the decisions?
Yeah, I think that is another. It's another kind of like piece of the somewhat, again, to use the word unique conversation that's happening around Feinstein, because there has been some reporting in recent months that she is just that she is not she's not performing her like functions in the same way that she was even a few years ago, and that and so that is really kind of like casting a certain cloud over this whole discussion, because that has to be taken into account to a certain extent, right? And so I think that I think that it's like Feinstein's team has indicated that she is going to make her plans official in the next couple of months. And I think that if she were to announce that she were running again, that would just spark such, shock, really. Beyond surprise, like true shock that if she were going to decide to run again. And so with that in mind, yes, there is a certain amount of because for Schiff, I think that he kind of views Feinstein as a mentor. So, he is approaching this situation differently than a Congresswoman Porter might, or, Congresswoman Khanna might, if he decides to jump into the race. But, it is, it's sort of a formality that some candidates feel like they might need to go through. But at this point, it's pretty clear. It seems pretty clear what is going to happen from here on out, which is that in the relatively near future, Feinstein will announce that she is not planning to run for re-election. She will step aside, and then it's going to open the floodgates for all day candidates to jump into the Senate race.
Yeah, I got you. I'm sure that that's going to happen, but I'm trying to get at something different, Joan. So let me run this by you. So I think the establishment has already picked Adam Schiff, and California Democratic Party especially is a machine. And there's usually a central decision behind closed doors, and then they back that candidate 100% to the whoever they're running against. By the way, I've personally experienced that. I ran for Congress in California 25th District, and Christy Smith was the candidate, and then I was attacked by every Democrat in California that's in an official position because I had defied the machine, right? Now, this is a great example of it because there is no Feinstein. We've shown the tapes. Everyone who's talked to her says she can't remember. Schumer will say one thing. She'll say one thing to Schumer. The very next hour, the very next day, she'll say the exact opposite. She clearly, cognitively does not exist. That means the machine is making the decision, and that means the machine has picked Adam Schiff. So Katie Porter will not just be running against Adam Schiff, should be running against the entire California Democratic Party, is what it appears. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that even with I think it's fair to say that Schiff is going to have a lot of establishment backing. I think that is very fair to say. He's been around for a long time. He's been in Congress. He's very deeply involved with the Democratic Party in California and nationally. And he has he's been he is a pretty prolific fundraiser, and he is a national figure, all these things. So yes, I think it's fair to say that he has a lot of establishment support going into this. That being said, Porter has I would say that it's not like it's even though he has all that support, it's not going to be a cakewalk for him. This is going to be a really hard fought race, I think.
No, that's not what I'm getting at. Yeah, I think Katie Porter is the favorite. But that only because it's a Fetterman-Connor Lamb situation, right? Because Katie Porter, hopefully, I cross your fingers, runs more as a populist progressive in the way that Fetterman did, and Connor Lamb was backed by the entire establishment in Pennsylvania, but got his ass kicked anyway. But let's not I feel like people are pretending that there isn't a machine and that it didn't back Schiff. But there is. The establishment is backing Schiff. There's no chance the establishment is going to back Porter or Khanna. But that's my opinion. But I'm curious what you think. Am I overstating it, or is that generally correct?
Yeah, I think that I do think I would say that there's definitely a lot of establishment backing going into that. I think will be backing Schiff for sure, and I think that is fair to say. But to your exact point too, I think that it is. I think that Porter and potentially some of the other candidates, but and certainly Porter because she is the one who's officially announced. I think that she is going to be a really she's going to be a very formidable candidate for sure. And it's and not just because of her fundraising, but also because she has made such a name for herself across across the state, across the country, and so even with that even though it is I think that Schiff will start off with that with the not insignificant assistance of having so much of the California Democratic Party and the National Democratic Party being his ability to work so many angles of that is going to really help him. But I still to your point, Porter is going to be a pretty strong candidate, and also when we think about some of the other potential candidates like Barbara Lee or Ro Khanna, I think that this it's even if it does have that, even if Congressman Schiff has that benefit, it doesn't it will I think it will still be a very interesting race to watch, as you said at the beginning, because it's his candidates, his opponents will have a lot going for them as well.
Yeah, so Joan, I'm curious what your take on this is. I like Katie Porter and Ro Khanna both. I'm a progressive, I don't hide that. But from your perspective, does Porter have the advantage or no? Hey, she's very connected to Elizabeth Warren. Ro Khanna was national co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign. Is that a tie or not?
Well, I think that because we also have the possibility of Barbara Lee entering the race as well, and so I guess I think that the concern is that how much is about there's so many progressives in California, just state the very obvious, and I think that, so I think one concern is that how much of the, for one concern for Porter and for Khanna and for Lee, if she decides to enter the race, which she has indicated that she wants to, how much are they going to end up splitting the progressive vote? I think that is, one concern. In terms of their credentials though, they all, I would say they all really have a pretty, both a very solid pitch to make to progressive voters and also pretty unique pitches in each of their cases. With Porter, you have her, she really is a politician in the mold of Elizabeth Warren, who she studied under at Harvard Law, and she really, even when she launched her campaign, really talked about herself in terms of fighting special interests and working for working people. Ro Khanna, definitely a close ally of Bernie Sanders. That will be really endear him to many progressive voters. And then Barbara Lee, who has fought against tried to argued against big Pentagon budgets for years. Voted against the Defense Authorization Act all the way back in 2001, I think it was. And so all of these candidates I think have really both very specific and also very rich pitches to make to progressive voters. And then I think that they just have to make sure that they don't, kind of cut the progressive vote so much that they end up below someone like Adam Schiff. Although that being said, because of California's system, the way that it works is the top two finishers, it will advance. So theoretically, even if they do split the vote, as long as they can stay above whatever Republican candidate ends up winning, one of them will advance to the general election.
Yeah, and that's going to be really interesting to watch because a Republican could definitely sneak in there. If the progressives split up the vote enough, and then you could have the worst case scenario for progressives, which is Schiff versus a Republican, which in my opinion is a Republican versus a Republican, and representing California, and that would be fitting though, because Dianne Feinstein, also a Republican, technically a Democrat, but loves hugging Lindsey Graham and hugging tax cuts for the rich, and has been conservative on almost every issue. And that way, the establishment tricks the voters of California, one of the most progressive states, into picking yet another conservative to represent them. So that's the game that's being played behind the game. We'll keep tabs on it. Joan Greve from The Guardian wrote about it, and we appreciate you joining us. Thank you, Joan.
Thanks so much.